Hey everyone, welcome back to a hot new episode of Real Queens Talk. It's your girl Kels here with Lil Sis Bree. Today we have an amazing guest for you, Miss Ria Shahoudry. She is a certified NLP and relationship coach, as well as an MBA mathematics, as well as business. And she's currently in the process of becoming a licensed psychosexual relationship therapist. Everyone, please help us give a welcome to Ms. Ria Shahoudry. Welcome.
Thank you very much, ladies, for having me on your show, your audience, and also share some moments with you.
Absolutely. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for being here. We're happy to have you. You are so knowledgeable. And I think like this topic of dating and relationships and sex, it's something that's very interesting to explore and, kind of dive into the intricacies of it. And for me, it's like I don't have that experience really with dating because I've been with my husband for 20 years. We were high school sweethearts. So like hearing other people's experiences is always very cool to me. Like, because I don't have that many experizations. So
yes, living vicariously through others, by proxy. You're dating by proxy.
Exactly.
I can, listen to other people's escapades and, they're sort of like Sex and the City episodes and
Right.
just kind of get to live through you.
Absolutely. So Ray, tell us a little bit about your background. So you started off with doing digital marketing, and like I said, you went to a very amazing, prestigious school for that. And how did you get into being a relationship and dating coach?
Yes, well, Kels, basically, I started very analytical, with a math background, with a computer science background, and I've always been very good at maths and, with my grades at school. My mom was very proud of me. And so I think that kind of encouraged me to be even better and doing more. But my life's journey brought me to the point that I realized that actually after going to the MBA and thinking, the shareholder value in the company, everybody was like talking about, in the 2000s about all shareholder value and increasing shareholder value. I realized that the most precious thing in life that really affects the quality of our lives is our relationships. And especially our romantic relationships, like, we could be married or not married, have a partner, or it could be short-lived relationships, but they really impact our lives, can make it or break it. So based on, after 2 divorces myself, I realized, no, I really want to get this right in my life. And this is the opportunity for me, even if I'm in my 40s. So I just delved into it, and it brought me to this now, the diploma that I'm training for to become a couples therapist.
That's awesome.
That is amazing. I always feel like we kind of discover what our purpose is in life through our own personal experiences and what we're passionate about, and then we're able to transform and take those experiences that we've had and help others through that. So I really think that that's awesome that
there's a saying calling the wounded healer. So it's based on actually that you end up actually being wounded before you become a healer. So the concept is the same as you were saying, Bree.
Yes, love that. Love it.
And so the psychosexual, you're going to be a psychosexual relationship therapist.
Yes. So basically, initially, I was thinking relationship, and there were programs that you could, study psychotherapy just for individual psychotherapy, and there were programs for relationships, and there's sex therapy. So they could be studied separately and trained separately. But over the last year, when I did my foundation in counseling, I did realize that, when you're talking about romantic relationships, you really cannot take sex out of it. They are really intertwined and linked together. Although, with all the diversity that's in place, now you've got asexual, aromantic, and there's a whole, different terminologies and concepts that I've been learning, because I've been brought up in this kind of heterosexual, heteronormative, narrative of the world. But now, there's so many different types of relationships and types of sexuality out there. So that's also quite, exciting to learn about. But going back to the sex part, yeah, unless you're asexual, which is absolutely okay as well. But, sex is linked with our romantic relationships. We cannot separate them.
Absolutely.
Right.
So true. It's very important in relationships, and we're going to get more into all of that because you are the expert.
Not yet. I'm going to still be humble and say not yet.
Training to become an expert.
Training to become an expert. Expert than more than other people, but not as much as expert as I would like to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So Ria,
you're working your way towards it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Ria, you mentioned that you went through 2 divorces and you began, kind of like you found yourself back in the dating pool in your 40s. And I know when we first talked, you mentioned that you went on over 40 first dates or something in a short amount of time. Tell us about that. Tell us about that. How did that happen?
So basically, obviously, thankfully, I didn't jump into dating straight after my separation. I did have like a 2.5, 3 years gap, and my son was really, really small at the time. But I was quite actually lonely, my family being in Iran and being in London myself, and I was not working at the time. So I felt quite isolated. So the dating was not only for me a way of meeting a man, it was for me also in a way of getting out there and dealing a little bit with the feelings of loneliness that come after a separation, that you feel like kind of a bit not abandoned, because we both mutually decided, but it was something that I didn't think through, like I'm going out there to find my new man. I was going out there just to get back into contact with people. And it was also a little bit like a healing journey for me, because, when you come out of a separation like that, especially with a small child, it can be quite overwhelming and shocking even.
Imagine.
So, so it was, but it was exciting as well, because I had never done online dating before, and I came into world of dating with Tinder and Bumble at 43.
I hear so many different, I hear crazy stories, and then I hear, I found my soulmate, so what was it like for you?
Also, you have to think about it that we're talking about 5 already years ago. So the apps have moved on way since then. At the time when I started dating, Bumble was new. Bumble was a kind of the contending app versus Tinder. Tinder was a big app at the time, and it was relatively new for everybody. I mean, all of these things come from America, and then they come to the UK. On the way to the continent, it's like they stop by in the UK, the island, on the way there. And so no, but it's also because of the language, right? Because English, the American market, and then the English-speaking market is UK before they hit the Europe. So Bumble was like, the apps were much more established in the US and America, maybe Canada, than they were in the UK. So it was very new, and it was quite exciting. I mean, I spoke to at least 100 men at least.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I could have kept the Excel sheet just to do my analysis afterwards. And I don't know, speaking to 100 men means how many swipes over 3.5 years. Right. And I met at least 50 more people, and I learned so much in this process. But I have to say, it was a huge roller coaster of emotion, because it is, and the apps were very, at the time, I think people who were on the apps, they were really there for dating, because they were dating apps and they were new. So people wanted to date. So, let's try these out. Yeah. But over time, as I was dating, like over the 4 or 5 years that this journey took, then you could see that the type of users had changed. You had people who were there just for the sake of being there and swiping, not really seriously looking to apps. Those days were not the same as the dating apps today, in terms of the experience. So yeah, it was quite interesting, because London is quite an international city. So there are so many people from across the world, in different cultures, and there are also lots of businessmen flying in. So you had a lot of people at the time. You didn't have Bumble didn't have that option of saying where you're from. It just showed your location. So you didn't know like if somebody was living in London or not. So you had people coming in and going out, and you matched with them, and then you would find out, oh my God, they actually don't live in London. And what a waste of time. Next.
Right.
So now with the dating apps, is that something that they kind of tweaked?
Definitely. And the features, as the dating apps features changed and they started, improving them, it was funny because every time there was a pain point and I was thinking, oh my God, why don't they put this? And then, and 1 month later you would say, I'm from here and I live here. And now I have the possibility to, travel mode and put myself into that country, because they realized that people were using the apps that way anyway. So
right. And I know, and I've always thought of Tinder, or from what I've heard from my friends, is it's mostly just like you meet someone. A lot of people that I've heard from Tinder, that you meet someone and it's literally just like not even dating, just for sex.
So Tinder, I was on Tinder. I met one person on Tinder, and my first date on Tinder, who ended up being also an Iranian guy.
Oh, okay. Right.
So I don't know, like that, my mentality was still stuck in the Iranian men. Right. And he told me about Bumble. And after that, I went on to Bumble, and then I wasn't even somehow I locked myself out of Tinder. I never managed to go back into Tinder. I tried. So my experience with Tinder was one date. So I won't be able to tell you about this whole part. But there was this kind of categorization that Tinder is mainly for sex and hookups. And that was out there, but I wasn't able to experience that.
So what are some of the things that you were discovering about men and about yourself, like when you were going through this experience of all of these different dating apps and, talking to over 100 men and meeting with over 50 of them? What did you learn about yourself and about men?
Oh my God, there's so much I learned. I learned so much that I'm going to become a psychosexual and relationship therapist. That's how much I learned. But basically, I think I went in there with the idea of, men are problematic, or, very kind of negative narrative about men. Like they're clueless about emotions. They're only looking for sex, the usual kind of things that we hear. And it was quite interesting because as time went by and the more I spent time speaking to men, I realized that they're actually quite sensitive, and that they're really looking for that connection, and they're really looking for compatibility. But I have to say, we have to put that in the context of age group, because I was looking at men 45 to 55. And probably it could be different for somebody who's in their 20s and dating, who may not be. I found out that they're quite, they're just human beings. It's just, maybe from a relationship perspective and communication perspective, women are stronger in certain ways. They've got skills that men have suppressed in themselves, the feeling side. But pretty much most people I connected with were very decent human beings, and and could actually open up and be vulnerable once, like, I modeled it for them. When I was being vulnerable and saying, very open, they would open up, and that was quite surprising to me, that strangers like that could open up so easily to you.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess because you have that, that loneliness in a sense in common, the fact that you did find some people on there who were actually serious about dating and what they were looking for. That is, was that like, I'm sure it had to be a little bit shocking to find so many people that you could connect with.
Yeah, I love connecting. Connection is one of my top 10 values. And one thing that was really interesting for me, that after a while was difficult for me to actually ditch the apps, was the level of connection with somebody who you would never ever connect in your life, because they're not in your circle of friends. I don't know if you've heard about the 6 degrees of separation. They say every person in the world is 6 degrees separate. But this was like, suddenly you're connected with somebody who's 6 degrees over there, and you can just be so honest and open. It's almost like, I guess, in the 80s or the 90s when they would go to the bar and just drink and talk about their life because they know, you're never going to see them anymore again. It's a bit this. I think there was a little bit of that also in the apps, that people just pour themselves out and they know, it's okay. They're not going to be judged.
Right,
so it was a bit therapeutic as well, to be honest. I guess both for me and for the people on the other side of the phone.
Right, I can understand that.
Yeah, I can understand that as well. And I would think that, like you said, there's that loneliness aspect. There's things that you already have in common. You're both obviously looking for some type of connection. You're both looking for, something committed, especially with that, like the age group that you were dating in. It's just a more mature age group for the most part. Like you said, there's always the exception, but
right.
for the most part, right, they're more mature, so they kind of have just a clear vision of what they want the rest of their life to look like. And most men want a partner to settle down with. Most men, they have the success and things like that. Maybe they're financially stable, but they're looking for someone to share it with.
And another byproduct of this dating was that I actually made a couple of very, very good male friends.
Oh, that's
very good male friends, like really, like 3 or 4. 2 of them I'm still friends with.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I always say that for me, it was mainly like for connection. It did end up in a few relationships as well, but it was really what was really fueling my enthusiasm about it was the connection with people, like human to human connection.
Right. Awesome.
So Ria, so my next question is, so many women have their deal breaker list, their absolute list, their list of all the things they think they absolutely need to have or want in a relationship. Did you have one of those lists as well? And
oh my God,
list should we have a list like that? What benefit does it have?
That is the checklist. It's called the checklist, the dating checklist. It's actually, Esther Perel talks about it in one of her speeches. She says, he needs to be tall, he needs to be handsome. If it's a woman, it needs to be hourglass, figure. And it is true that I think all of us have a list. Some of us consciously know it. Some of us unconsciously have that list in the background. And I think the issue that arises with the list is that there are certain things that you absolutely need to have. Like you want to have somebody, who's respectful, somebody who's kind, somebody who, for certain people, like has family values. So there are some non-negotiables that are important, especially when it comes to values, so that you want to date based on values, which is something a whole big chapter for itself, because a lot of people just think about chemistry. I felt that chemistry, there was this connection, but they completely throw out the whole value system. So I think there are certain things that are given, but in my experience, the way it played out for me and for my clients and few of my friends that I've also helped in the way, most of the time the list is really limiting and hindering actually them finding somebody, because first of all, we think we want some things, but it's not necessarily the things we want. Maybe it's the things our parents want, maybe the things our religion wants, maybe it's the things that our community wants. So my first question would be, do you actually truly need that and want that for yourself, or is this some kind of introjected value or idea from another place that is just limiting you? Obviously, we're not talking about the kindness and respect, the basis for foundation of a healthy relationship. And the other point is, like, over time, as time goes by, we change. So the things we need and want change. So it's not really a static thing, because as we experience things, we realize, oh my God, you know what? Actually, no, I don't want a man who says yes to everything I say. Actually, no, I want him to stand up for himself. But then you meet an aggressive guy. He's on the other end of the spectrum, because that's what happens. We go from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. And he's so aggressive and disrespectful. Oh my God, I don't want this. And then you again go back to a sensitive guy. So you got to go back and forth in this, spectrum and pendulum of the things you want and don't want until you finally get to that point where you realize, this is where I'm comfortable and this is what the balance is necessary. But in dating specifically, there's this meeting with this lady who starting up this matchmaking company and in the networking. And she was telling me, like, when she was running the interview list, because she would interview their clients to see what they want. And I was looking at the list, she was running it past me to get my feedback. And I was like, really? Like, what are these questions? Like, she said, you have no idea. There is this new thing called the eek. I said, what do you mean this new thing called the eek? And then I thought, oh my God, I'm a fossil now because I'm so old. I don't know what the eek is.
I don't know what that is either.
I've never heard of it.
There is this thing called eek, I-C-K. Maybe I'm pronouncing it badly. So that means that they do something and you've got to ick. It's like,
ew. Like,
so now there's a thing in dating. So the guy like opened his umbrella like that, eek, or he moved the glass like this, eek. So I'm like, people are putting so many restrictions, on what they like and they don't like. And I think, actually, you know what? I think this is people who are emotionally unavailable, who come up with these eeks and these stories just to make sure they don't find somebody.
Right.
Oh, wow. Right. Subconsciously, they're sabotaging themselves. They're sabotaging themselves and making it, like I said, this confined world where it's harder now to date someone or to find someone because you're so closed off. You're closed off in your heart. You're closed off in your mind. So it does limit you in many ways, which some people don't really understand, right?
So actually, Kels, speaking to what you just said, the list is a way of closing up again.
Right. Well. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Again, I don't want to say ladies out there don't have a standard. That's not what I'm saying. Have a standard. Right. When you have a standard, you have a standard for yourself first before having a list, I think. So
yes, I completely agree with that. That's definitely a good way of putting it.
I think like some of the superficial things that can be on people's list, like you said, like, oh, the way he walks bothers me, or the way he, drinks from a cup bothers me. Like are those really deal breakers? Like, that's kind of very surface, very surface.
No, as I said, I think this is there are trends that happen in a society, and I find things in the dating scene, because if you study it like a science, and you look at it at a very global scale, you realize how a society is moving, because at the end of the day, everybody needs connection. And the human connection is so important. And the way people go about making that connection or not making that connection, I find that quite fascinating, from a psychology and behavioral perspective. So this ick thing was for me like, wow, like this is now new. Like,
that's interesting.
In the human species.
And also like when it comes to a relationship and being what do you define as a healthy versus toxic or non-healthy relationship?
Yeah. Again, this toxic word, people love it, don't they? Everybody wants to say somebody else is toxic.
Yeah.
I love it how everybody, he's a narcissist, he's toxic, she's a drama queen. They're like all these words.
All the labels.
All the labels. So I think for me, personally, respect is very important. I think that the first pillar and foundation of any relationship, and it doesn't have to be just romantic relationship, whether it's with your child, whether it's with your parents, whether it's with the co-workers, is respect. And maybe it's very close to my heart because I had that issue in my previous relationship where I was really not respected. And that's, I think we choose the things where we have experience with, right? So I think respect is very important. And for me, another thing that's really important in a healthy relationship is to have a growth mindset. So if people are open, and that brings the open-mindedness, the openness, because nobody's perfect, right? Everybody's got weaknesses. Everybody's got their triggers, their wounds, if you want to use the jargon in the industry, everybody's got their attachment styles or all these things. So what are you going to do? You're going to say, this person has this problem, so I don't want to deal with them. They're toxic. I think, but if people realize and they come from the compassion side to say, okay, I've got my issues, he's got his issues, but we are both open on working on our issues. And that's what I mean by growth mindset. And we're willing to do the work, and we're willing to do the work together. Then I think that's like the good definition for me of a healthy relationship.
Right.
Now we can go into a nitty gritty, practical points one by one to say, there's respect, there's communication, there's, setting boundaries, all these things. But at the end of the day, for each person and individual, there are going to be different things at different levels that they need to work on. But if they're not willing to even acknowledge that they have something to work on, you're already in a lost cause, and you're going to waste your time. So I would say, don't go there, because that's for me the most toxic. Not moving forward is the most toxic.
Right. What are some red flags or signs that we should be looking for when you're in the beginning of dating? Because so many people ignore the signs, they ignore the red flags. What are some initial red flags? Because I know you mentioned respect, of course, but how do you pick up on a person not being a respectful person early on?
We've got two things that help us. We've got our head and we've got our heart. So the head is the logic and the reason that of the things you learn, and you say, okay, I have to watch out if he is respectful, opens the door for me, or some people say, okay, it's respect to pay for the meal, or is respect to answer my call within half an hour. Everybody could have their different ideas of respect, but the main thing I would say is that the red flags, if you are really tuned into yourself, and that's going to the heart, from the head to the heart, and you feel that something is not right, you know it. Right. You know inside that something is not right. You don't have to go and check the checklist of the red flag, because there could be certain things can be red flags in certain situations, and they could be not red flags in certain situations. But that moment that you sat at the table, that you said something and he looked at you weirdly, or you said something and he made fun of you or condescending, or one of my clients got up to walk to go to the bathroom and she twisted her ankle and the guy laughed, things like that, is like, there are things like that, or get a call at 4 a.m. from a guy who hasn't, on a dating app she's never met. Things like that are, again, it doesn't mean that person is bad or toxic. It just means that it doesn't feel good for you. And if you catch it, that this doesn't feel good, and then don't start convincing yourself with the head. So the feeling said, okay, it's not something not right? The alarm bell is going on. Either you shut the alarm bell and go back to sleep, right? Which most of us do.
Just keep
These are metaphors, right? So then, because you want to have a child before 40, or because you are lonely, or because you want to prove to your friends that you've got the boyfriend, for whatever reason it is, or because you're horny and you want sex, whatever reason it is, you just shut that alarm bell. So I would say the red flag only matters if you're not this.
Okay. So with everything that you've learned through your dating experiences and helping your friends and other people find love, do you believe that's still a twin flame? Do you believe that that's a thing? Is there still hope for soulmates?
Soulmates. I don't believe in soulmates. Just come out and say it outright. So I know it's kind of hurtful for some people to hear that, and you think that when you meet that person and you've got that feeling, and if there is a feeling of similarity, we get attracted to them. So this is the imago therapy. So a lot of people think that that's the chemistry, that's the soulmate, that's the twin flame. But actually, there's a whole psychology behind this of what it happens. And the whole reason is that when we are born as children, we have this aliveness, this joy of life. And over time, because of some people get actually abused, some people have big traumas, some people have small traumas, or just somebody says something and it sticks into their head, mind, that, oh, I'm not good enough because I didn't get a good grade. One parent might say something, oh, like, did you make sure you didn't make any mistakes? And that's it. For life, then you've got that belief in your head. So these wounds, afterwards, you want to heal them. So what do? You go and find somebody who's got some characteristic similarities with that your caregivers, and you try to connect with them to heal this wound. Now, the more they're similar to those caregivers, the more the attraction is, the higher the attraction. So people think that that's their soulmate, but actually it's not. It's just you being attracted because you want to heal your childhood wound. So I found that really fascinating, this concept, and all these twin flames and soulmates and chemistry. And that's why some people saying don't go by chemistry work. Then yes, then that person could become your soulmate. Not that they are your soulmate when you meet them, but they become your soulmate, I would say.
I love that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. And I know I've always heard that, like for females specifically, we tend to enter relationships with men who remind us of our fathers. And so, they may have some type of characteristics. Typically I found that it's the negative characteristics, because like you said, it's those childhood traumas and those childhood wounds that, attract us to that person. And then a lot of times I've also seen that people who have had similar traumas in their lives, men and women, tend to connect, through that trauma, those same traumas and things that they've been through. So I find
absolutely. Yeah, it actually has a name, Bree. It's called trauma bonding.
I've heard of that before. Yeah. And I'm sure that's probably not a recipe for more of a recipe for disaster than some big things.
Actually, you say that, and I thought that as well, because bonded on certain traumas.
My next question was going to be, how can women empower themselves to have a more fulfilling sex life?
So I think about women empowering themselves to have a more fulfilling sex life. I think one thing that stops women a lot is generally everybody about sex is guilt and shame. There's a lot of feeling of guilt associated and a lot of taboo with sex. And if we really want to be liberated, to grow as individuals, we all talk about growth in general, but we don't talk about sexual growth. And this is something that came to my attention more recently, that actually you can have sexual growth. Growth is not just about mental, intellectual, or emotional, but also sex. So for women to empower themselves, I think the first thing is to be able to shed any beliefs and any negative guilt and shame oriented feelings that's related to sex for them, and realize that a healthy sex life is good for you physically, mentally, emotionally, and brings you closer to your loved one. As a tool to become close and create intimacy, rather than just consider sex as a separate thing, regardless. But actually, when they're tired, they're stressed, they're sick, they don't want to have sex. And each one of these myths impact our sex lives for women in a heterosexual relationship in many, many different ways that we don't realize. So learn about sex and also learn about your own needs, your preferences, and not to be afraid to communicate them. So you can get empowered by just knowing, I like this or I don't like this. If you've had limited sexual experiences, you can still try different things with yourself, being sensual with your body, and learn what you like and communicate it to your partner. So I think first is that taking that vision away and having this positive, they call these a sex positivity vision about sex, and using it as a tool for closeness and pleasure rather than just performance sex. Does that make sense?
No, yes. I love that answer you delivered. And I think it's so true, because I know, I don't know how it is around the world, but I know in America, most parents are like, no, sex is bad. From the time they
don't have sex until you're married. Don't have sex ever. You're going to die.
So you said, and that guilt and shame, it just kind of follows you throughout life, because as you were saying before, even how that trauma, kind of just stays with you until you heal that. It's the same thing with some of our thought patterns and, some of the preconceptions that we have about certain topics. And I think sex is the most common common topic for at least for Americans to be like very taboo about, or have that guilt, that shame, or and then also from our experiences, women in particular, a lot of women have they're shamed by other people. They're called a whore, they're called a slut. These things, if they do express their sexuality and if they are open about it, they're discussing these things. So then it's like, okay, well, if I'm gonna be abused and bashed when I do talk about it, I'm just not gonna, I'm not gonna
do
talk.
It. Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's like, this societal thing that has molded how the majority of people, especially women, like, kind of deal with sex and kind of address those things. And then it also makes us less, I can't think of the word, but it makes us like less comfortable sharing our wants and needs. We express those desires, and so definitely.
Yeah, so that's why it's so important to be with my pen. That is why it's so important. Like the teacher, that is why it's so important to be with a person who's got that growth mindset and open mind. So I always kind of go full circle back to that.
Right.
How can you be talking about your preferences and your likes with somebody who's closed-minded, who may blame you, shame you, guilt trip you, and not want the best for you, to grow sexually. So definitely.
Right. In so many other cultures, they embrace sex. They encourage it. They embrace, just really being more in tune with their sexuality. And like we said before, America is one of those countries where it's the opposite. How was it for you growing up?
Oh, Iran is even worse because I grew up under an Islamic regime where, like, even talking to a boy was not allowed, very completely oppressive regime. So I was 4 when the revolution happened. So I'm not sure how it was before then. But I kind of think the more you go back in time, when you think about the Indian culture, they had the Kutra, for instance, and there are lots of tribes, the tribe, even the Americans, they very open-minded about lots of, about sex. I think it's more religion that caused this taboo around sex, and that came with the countries who, when they went around the world to India and, all the exploitation started happening, then they kind of passed that across. But I think it's the same in majority of the world now. Everybody's got this taboo about sex.
Wow. Yeah. It's very interesting. It's very interesting because, men, I will ask you, have you found that most men are the opposite and they want to talk about sex, or have you encountered men who are kind of standoffish with that topic or a little more reserved?
During my dating, I met a couple of men who were quite open-minded. One of them actually told me a story about having dated an older woman in his late 20s and that she taught him everything. And I was always feeling like a bit, I dated him just for a few times. I didn't like date him for a long period of time, but I was always very good. I don't know anything, although I've been married twice. And I think that's one of the reasons I decided to do the psychosexual study, because it's not only that I want to have the relationship part of, my life to be wonderful, but I want my sex life to really up level. And there was also a man that I remember completely very robotic, even in the sexual acts. It was so robotic, so quiet, so non-communicative. And I'm just like thinking, what the hell is happening here? But with I started like really discovering sex in my 40s.
Right.
Discovering sex. I have had sex before. I had a child.
Right.
But I started discovering sex in my 40s. And with my new partner, who is also a bit reserved and holds back, I'm just keep sending him pictures of each page of this book that I'm reading about letting go, letting your feelings and sounds and movements show that you're desiring your woman and that you're turned on and all these things. And so it's new for me right now to, up-leveling my sex life. And it's really wonderful when you can speak to your man. And so he's at the beginning, he was very wary. He was like, I don't like to talk about sex. The more we talk about it, the more self-conscious I'm getting about it. It's awkward. We should not talk about it so much. And now he's like, okay, let's do these exercises. Have you answered the questions on this exercise?
And usually so many men are, at least they come off as this macho, and or we just assume as women that many men are just comfortable with their sexuality and they're just horn dogs. They just want all the time, and they don't care who or with or what it is with, or they just want it no matter what. But as I'm sure as you learn, is really not the case with most men. Some men, I think so, yes, but not all of them.
No, I think those are one of the myths. Those are one of the myths, that men are ready to have sex whenever, with whomever, and they just want sex. No. The quality of the sex is dependent on the quality of the connection. Mm-hmm. So, just preempting you for about the better sex question is... is like people separate, always think, okay, what is a good sex like? And they think about the positions, toys, the lingerie, or, the body, hot body, or, all tanned or all muscly. But really, I don't know what your experience has been. My experience has been like the best sexual feelings I've had has been when I've been super, super connected and present.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that because without that, you're just kind of going through the motions. Like, you might just be kind of laying there, or you may even be faking it, if you don't really have that connection. First, if you're not in tune with your own body, your own needs, your own sexuality, if you're not comfortable with that, then how are you going to be comfortable, embracing someone else's needs? And because it's a two-way street, right? You're there to please each other, enjoy yourself, but you're there for each other. So I think without like knowing yourself first and kind of exploring, like you said, discover your own sexuality and discover what you like, then you're not going to have that, that deep, intimate connection when you're actually engaging in the act.
Yeah. And there was one very good thing, one of these, again, authors I was reading said, Emily Nagoski, I think her name is, she's written Come As You Are. It's also a very, very good book. And she talks about spontaneous sex with responsive sex. And spontaneous sex is basically the sex everybody wants, that, spontaneously happen. It's hot. Everybody's like so turned on, etc. And once you've been in a relationship for a long time, those ones are rare. It's not like it's not like it doesn't happen, but people kind of downgrade the responsive sex, which means that you actually make time for it. You plan it, you communicate about it, that can be as good, but people kind of downplay it because there's this whole media and storytelling. And again, another myth that good sex has to be spontaneous sex.
Right.
So I think so many if you consider it like a, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, it's like so many people see certain things in movies, like these movies like 50 Shades of Grey, and they expect these just whirlwind romances, and it's supposed to just the fairy tale part of it, not the reality of it. People are busy when you're in a relationship for a long time. It's not, how you said, it's not always going to be spontaneous. You have to put more effort into it.
And the most important thing, if there's one takeaway on that, is for couples to make quality time with each other. And by quality time, it doesn't mean like going and walking the dog together. It means face-to-face quality time of talking, I don't know, doing one activity. I don't know if they like walking together in the nature, not a task. By the dog, I didn't mean like, not a task-oriented activity, but something that they're doing together with each other, and they can have face-to-face contact and talk and connect and touch and hug without necessarily thinking it's going to go to sex, because that is the actual foreplay. That is the actual foreplay. For women especially, that you are then in the mood of wanting to go there. That's the thing that this PhD doctor Zilberger explains. Sorry, this Dr. Zilberger, not this guy. That one of the best sex therapists in America. Old book, it's from 1999, but it's very, very, very valid still. He says like, men just think, okay, there are differences between men and women. Men can be excited about their woman and just get up and have sex straight away. But women usually need that time of kind of getting into the mood. And again, one of these authors, I don't remember who, was saying that the foreplay is actually the whole day.
Yes.
The foreplay
Starts
is the
with the
actual whole day.
Because for
mm-hmm.
And
us,
I thought
it's
that was
more
very,
mental, emotional. It's not just physical.
Emotional for
So
women.
much more. What did
Yeah.
you do to nurture this? So late at the end of the night, you have a great night. So
yeah.
there's definitely a lot more to it than just the physical for women.
Yeah. So if there are any men out there listening to this podcast, please bear in mind, put the children to bed, make the
Right.
dinner, massage
Yes.
her back, then think about
Yep.
sex.
Right.
Right.
Don't forget the flowers and just it's the little things, For some women, they might want these big grand. I personally, it's like you said, the small things that still matter. The little things that still matter are very still important to keep in mind. You still want to keep dating your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with both of you 100%, because even on a spiritual level, like for my husband and I, like, it's spiritual for us. It's emotional. It's, it's so many more things than just, the physical aspects of it. And, as we like, have grown together, like you were saying, we with that growth mindset, we have literally grown together over 20 years. And so we've kind of discovered along the way, the ins and outs of actual sex and how men think and how I think. And, like we've had a therapist interject and kind of just give us some guidance as well, like to, see what we're doing wrong. Where are we misunderstanding each other? Where is the miscommunication? Because it happens, right? But we discovered that as well, that starts at the beginning of the day. That was something that our therapist like made very clear, that I couldn't figure out how to convey, but she was able to kind of pull it out of my mind and be like, yeah, you're right. Like, yes, when she wakes up in the morning, let her wake up to flowers or, just randomly, like, it doesn't have to be for any occasion or, like things like that. And like you said, men, they can just see us in a pair of shorts and they're like, oh, like, they're ready. So,
They're very visual. They're very visual. Actually, their excitement is very visual, and women it's got different. So I think it's important to know the differences between men and women. And another thing that I found with one of my clients that was quite interesting, because the person she was just connecting on an app had become very sexual very quickly, in the sense that they hadn't even met each other, just over phone or over and it was very clear that. And then I read it also in a book, then it kind of reinforced what I was thinking, that, one of the issues is poor men, really, you have to give it to them. They've been told not to cry. They've been told not to be emotional. Otherwise, they're wuss and they're crybabies. And since childhood, they push down and suppress all their feelings. And when it comes to women, the only thing they think is they're allowed in terms of expressing their feelings is sex. So that becomes their language. Right. So that becomes so sometimes they think, okay, they want to fix things if things have gone bad, and they want to have sex and have that kind of make-up sex, because for them, that's their way. And women are just like, no, I want to talk first. That's my way, And then they're like, but I don't know how to talk, basically, in the background. This is my language. I just want to connect with you again. So I think it's also from our side, from women's side, there's a lot of understanding that needs to be about how men have suffered in this patriarchal society. It's not only women, but the whole system has been negative for both men and women.
Yes.
In different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it definitely comes out in the relationships, all of those kind of preconditioning, societal conditioning that we've all had growing up, and like you said, suppressing those emotions, telling boys, oh, you be a man up, like you don't cry. What are you crying for? Stop being a sissy, things like that. That definitely makes it more difficult for them when they are an adult and trying to be in a relationship, because they've never been allowed to express themselves emotionally.
Yeah.
Right. Because they become they become emotionally unavailable. And for women, a lot of us can be really needy emotionally, and our men unfortunately don't really know how to be that person that we need, for them to show up really emotionally. But Rhea, this has been such great information. So amazing. Can you tell us a little bit how you started helping your friends and other women navigate their dating lives at 40? How you've been helping other women to find their
Well,
person?
each person's journey is obviously. Some people are just starting to get out there after a divorce and they're not looking for something serious and they just want to have a feel. Some people have been looking for a long time and they really are very intentionally dating to meet someone. So there are different scenarios. So I have not yet sat down and created a program like a class or online course. I do one-on-one coaching only because every case is unique. So I have a couple of programs. Well, I have one like foundational level just for people who want to just put their toe in the water and start testing again, which is like a 4-week program. And for those who are very serious and going for it, I have a 9-week program for dating mastery that I work with people on.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
So did you use those tips and, that formula to kind of reel your man in that you have now?
Well, I met my man on an app and he did not tick half of my checklist. And I didn't want a long distance relationship. He doesn't live in the UK. I didn't want a guy who was responsible solely for his children. He's almost got his children 70% of the time. At the time, I was not looking for a man who was not divorced, and he wasn't divorced yet. I wanted a man who was definitely divorced, was separated for 4 years, but not yet divorced. So he divorced within 3 months, by the way. But I just think I just realized that I think I was just much more myself, and I just was very, very becoming very clear about what boundaries mean for me, which I didn't know before. And I just went with my feeling. Once I disconnected with him on the app because he was being very arrogant, I just disconnected. And then I went and found him on the internet and saw a video of him where he was at a business meeting or something. It was a trade fair show and I just fell in love with his eyes. They were both a rebel and a romantic, exactly what I like. And then I went and found him on LinkedIn and messaged him. And he was like, "Oh my God, you're one of a kind. You found me on LinkedIn." It was like the investigative journal. And it's been 2 years now, still going back and forth between London and Switzerland. Yeah. So
wow, we're very happy for you, for your happiness.
Thank you. So I want to share it. Yes, I really would like other people to be able to make that leap as well. That's something I want to share with other women.
And Rhea, how can someone find you to be able to acquire these wonderful services and help find the partner?
Yes. They can find I'm mainly on Instagram. I'm both on YouTube and Instagram, but I'm more active on Instagram. So on my Instagram handle is datingstories.rhea. And the dot is very important because I locked that myself out of my previous account, which doesn't have a dot. So don't go to Dating Stories Rhea, go to datingstories.rhea or my website, rheashahroudi.com.
Wonderful.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, Rhea, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that our audience is definitely going to get some valuable tips and, information from everything that you shared with us. And I know that your clients find great value in what you are able to help them accomplish as well with their dating lives. So
thank you again.
Yes, thank you so much for being here with us, sharing all your amazing knowledge and just being so easy to talk to today. And just really, we definitely wish you the best in your future. Hopefully we're invited to a wedding soon.
Yes, hopefully. Let's first get us into the same city. No, it was lovely. It was really lovely chatting with you ladies. Over the ocean.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. Well, yeah, everyone, make sure that you're following us on Instagram at RealQueensTalk_official. Go to our website, check out our merch, RealQueensTalk.com, and make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit the like button, follow, share, all that. And until next time, stay real and stay tuned, kings and queens. Bye.